War. War never changes. I guess mankind is doomed to make the same mistakes over and over again. This intro is not voice acted. Hello friends, I hope everyone is doing well. What is Fallout Resurrection? It's a fan-made game on the old Fallout engine. It took a decade to make. Originally released in 2013, translated from Czech to English in 2016. You can download and play it right now. All you need is a copy of Fallout 2. We should get something out of the way. Yes, it's a stupid name. No, it doesn't sound like Fallout at all. But that's the worst part about it. The game is otherwise pretty good. But is it as good as other major fan games made in this engine? Nevada, Sonora, Olympus? Well, let's find out. Since the mod has been around for a while, I want to go through the game with a build I am sure nobody else will do, because it's very stupid. Our key skills are going to be gambling, science, and energy weapons. Yes, a gambling build. A perfect combination to make the early game absolute hell. We'll also crank up the difficulty to maximum, because why not? Let's see, what's a popular Czech name? Jan. Our name is Jan Gordon.
Gordon doesn't need to hear all this. He's a highly trained professional.
We begin the adventure in a cave, staring at an ass of a giant rat without any memory of who or what we are. Such is RPG tradition. Our possessions are few, a handful of stimpaks, a primitive pistol, and this mysterious talisman. Fighting the tutorial rats with no combat skills is pure suffering. Goddamn, look at that, I'm all rat. As far as our weak-ass character is concerned, that thing is the boss of the level. We eventually kill it with our crappy pistol, losing most of our health in the process. The pistol sprite was borrowed from Fallout Tactics, which works okay for this particular item, but it's nevertheless a practice I'm suspicious of, since the classic Fallout and Fallout Tactics have a noticeably different visual style and color palette. The game is called Resurrection, and we start in a cave, a theme. Classic Fallout ambient. Love it. The villager takes us to the nearby settlement. We receive medical aid for free, which is nice of them, but the doc says it would certainly be cool if we did some side quests to help out the locals. The strangest thing is that nobody refers to the village by name. All the inhabitants just call it the settlement. This lady's the local sheriff, I think. The villagers are migrants from the nearby place called Rat Hole. It used to be nice, they say, until the gang war made it near uninhabitable. Chronologically, the events of the game take place between Fallout 1 and 2, so the Master is dead, but the NCR is still in the formative stages. The Legion is not yet a thing either. Geographically, we are in New Mexico. Our character is too incompetent even for the simplest of side quests. I decided to head for Rat Hole, hoping to find a solution there. Holy Christ, this place is a war zone. A kid runs away scared when we attempt to talk to him. The locals beg for food. Another reason the game carries the name it carries is because it resurrects or awakens the genre of classic Fallout-like RPG from its decade-long slumber. Prior to this project, the previous title with similar gameplay and camera perspective was Arcanum, released all the way back in 2001. That's 12 years of abstinence. Although compared to the original game, there are subtle differences in the design. Take the mapping style, for example. The Rat Hole maps have a noticeably higher object density than your typical OG Fallout map. Everyone in this town is very rude. This guy is the leader of one of the two local gangs who ended up destroying the town. His name is Julian. The rival gang is led by Leonard. The thugs have a little private bar. They refuse to serve us, though. This person has a dog locked in one of the rooms. Mutt is a potential companion and possibly a solution for our problems. We feed him a bunch of beef jerky and the canine becomes our friend. The dog seems to be good enough in combat to carry us through the early levels, although this fight against a mature red scorpion is still very tough. I had to inject a stimpack into Mutt. Let's go check out Leonard's part of town. the rival gang's HQ. The boss won't see us. We have to deal with the henchman lady instead. It's possible to work with either organization, or even with both of them at the same time. You feel very clever doing this, but since eventually we might have to wipe out one of the gangs, empowering them might be a bad idea. The local priest marks the location of another nearby town, a place called Sedit. I do some grave robbing, because why not? We need the money, and they don't. Sedit is a caravan hub. We are not done with the rat hole side quests yet, but I nevertheless decided to pay a brief visit there, hoping to find an energy weapon. We're supposed to specialize in those, remember? On our way there, we are ambushed by a pack of ghouls, who seem to know who we are. We won't stop until we got you. Wherever you went, however long it took, says one of them before attacking. Sedit feels like a mix of the hub from the first game with a little bit of New Reno from the second. We can get a job guarding one of the caravans. Might do that later. The police building is huge, overshadowed only by the sheriff's residence. That's just straight up oligarchic. The local gun stores have a decent selection of firearms, but no energy weapons. This build is gonna be a huge pain in my rear end. The eastern part of the city is called Little Hub, populated by the Hub refugees. In the original game, it was the biggest social location. The place was overrun by super mutants after the master died. The bookstore has an excellent selection that replenishes every few days, but the books are crazy expensive. The path through the cave connects the law and order part of Sedit with its criminal New Reno part. The guard warned us that the tunnel is populated by deathclaws, but only one of the animals has to be fought. The rest of them you can circumvent. The bad part of town. Oh hey, a fighting arena and a casino. They keep creatures in cages, including a rare floater. I think that might be the only floater in the game. Unfortunately, we are not qualified in unarmed or melee combat, but we are qualified in cheating at cards. I was saving points. Let's get our gambling skill up a bit. As I've discovered, different games we can play have different skill requirements. With our sub 100 points in gambling, we can reliably rob the slot machines, but not the roulette tables. I just jam the 5 key until the machine stops giving me free money. The problem is, we can't spend our caps here. There are no energy weapons for sale, and we desperately need one. I still have unfinished side quests in Rat Hole, for Christ's sake. So we seek employment with Frederick's Caravan Company, one of the 3 caravans in town. On our way south to Albuquerque, we're ambushed by a well-armed group of ghouls. The caravan leader dies instantly. Mutt, no! I am not reloading. We are the worst guard ever. But eventually I do kill the last remaining ghoul with our shitty starter Fallout Tactics pistol. On each of the bodies there was the same talisman we started the game with. Also combat shotguns and stims. Rest in peace, friend. We arrive at night. The entrance is protected by heavily armed guards, one of whom is wearing power armor. I show him the talisman we started the game with, and he welcomes us in, assuming we took it from a dead ghoul. The armed men are the Mutant Hunters, one of the game's factions. They double as the town's police force. A small tribal community is allowed inside the walls. The city is huge, bigger than Sedit it looks like. Our gambling build keeps suffering from bad luck. The gun merchant has no energy weapons for sale. Maybe someone in the Hunter compound can help us. We are not allowed inside, but the guard pays us a bunch of caps for each ghoul talisman we bring him. The local hospital is expansive, occupying several buildings. Looks like they're well equipped. Every classic Fallout game at some point gives the player an opportunity to raise a stat or multiple stats via cybernetic implants or some sort of advanced surgery. That's usually an important late game thing to do. In Fallout Resurrection, every attribute except for luck can be increased via surgery. The more generally useful the stat is, the more you have to pay. Raising agility costs a what the fuck 25,000 caps. Guys, I think it's gonna work out. The gambling build might be the best build for this game after all. The Caravan Master is still waiting for us by the town entrance. We didn't get an energy weapon, but the trip wasn't a complete waste of time. Let's get back to Sedit. You know, they ridicule Skyrim for a large percentage of its population being bandits, but the same was always true for basically any Fallout game. We get paid $400. We only need to make the trip 62.5 times in order to afford the implant. Non-gamblers cope. Unlike in classic Fallout, in Resurrection, the stores close for the night. And you can't just sleep on the street, you need to find a place to stay. Or you can fuck around the world map, I guess. The game even has something resembling NPC schedules. The shop owners will ask you to vacate the store if it's getting too late. Since we have a combat shotgun and our firearms skill is a little better thanks to all the magazines I bought with our gambling money, it's time we go back to Rat Hole. This here bum is the town mayor. The conflict between the two gangs that ended up tearing the community apart. It's all because of a woman, his daughter. Both gang leaders were romantically involved with her, and then she died. Leonard and the other guy blamed each other. The rest is history. The quest sends us on a fairly involved detective investigation. We have to interrogate witnesses, gather clues until the truth is finally revealed. The lady was murdered by Leonard's aide, Alexa, who didn't like that the two were getting close. Alexa eventually poisoned Leonard and became the de facto leader of the gang. We can't take these guys on by ourselves, so we ask their rivals for help. A massive firefight ensues. This is fun. The original Fallout games didn't have many moments like this. The battle is also very hard, probably because prior to this I did a quest for Alexa's gang that ended up making them stronger than they would otherwise be. Choices and consequences and all that. I had to reload several times. Some of the bullets hit random civilians. The mod loves filling maps with shelves and crates that don't have anything in them. The lads are heading back to the west side. Job done. We should go back to Sedit. I have a plan.
They all love slot machines, and I have a system, an infallible system for beating them.
At this stage, we have enough points in gambling to reliably win at games that can be played indefinitely. You just jam the 5 and 1 keys until you have all the caps in the world. Gaming hard or hardly gaming? This is when the build comes together. The Sedit bookshop sells an unlimited amount of books on guns, first aid, outdoorsman science, and repair. So if you have infinite money, like we basically do, you can get proficient at all of these skills. Of course, all of this is completely stupid and immersion breaking, but you know, it's not every day you come up with a new way of playing a 24-year-old RPG. Well, at least it's new for me. And we're not done. I know where to spend the rest of our money. Resurrection doesn't feature too many new art assets, but there are some, like this extremely speciesist poster. We have enough caps to do all the operations, increasing each one of our attributes except for luck. Attributes are important, so this is a tremendous boost. A gambling-based build is the only way to get enough caps to do this. That is, unless you want to spend dozens of real-life hours grinding random encounters in the desert. I didn't actually check in-game, but I believe the doctor said it takes 2 weeks to recover from an operation. This means our characters spend more than 3 months in Albuquerque. So while we are recovering, let's use this quiet time to talk about something else.
About damn time you got that lazy ass out of bed, kid.
Those of you following the classic Fallout modding scene might have noticed that almost all big total conversion projects that were actually completed originate from Russia. Nobody knows why Russians have this affinity for classic Fallout. It's just one of life's mysteries. But they do, and these games are usually very good. Resurrection, developed by a Czech team, is notable for being the sole Western Fallout TC that is of high enough quality to compete with the greats. But there are big projects still in development, like Fallout Yesterday, which attempts to remake Van Buren, the original Fallout 3 that survives mostly in design documents, on the engine of Fallout 2, which is an excellent choice for an engine. Frankly, the old Van Buren tech looked like hot garbage. Another attempt to continue the story from where Fallout 2 left off is Mutants Rising. The feature list is impressive. The project was started all the way back in 2003, around the time Resurrection began development. Mutants Rising Rising remains incomplete. The problem is essentially human capital. There are very few individuals who understand how to write scripts for the classic Fallout engine, which is a nightmare to work with. Some months ago, a member of the dev team published a call for help on NMA. If you happen to be a Fallout scripter, a creature more rare than a unicorn, you are needed. There is a demo available for this, but I don't actually recommend you play it, since it showcases a no longer relevant earlier version of the project, and it's only like 20 minutes long. You will be spending most of the time in Fallout Resurrection in the triangle between the caravan town of Sedit, Albuquerque, and the mining settlement of Korath. These three locations contain something like 80% of the game's content. We'll be moving between them a lot, often with trade caravans. Korath has a strong local tradition of ring fighting, a tradition formalized into law with its own rules and regulations. This is how the disputes are settled. It's possible to nominate other people to do battle in your stead, so as you might imagine, making friends with a super mutant fellow is an important part of local politics. The Sedit Inn is run by ghouls. Something I always like to see in these games are mixed communities of humans, ghouls, and super mutants. A negotiation between two competing caravan companies ends in a firefight, despite the sheriff's residence being just across the street. The difference in mapping style between this game and the originals is very obvious in Albuquerque. There are noticeably more NPCs per map in Resurrection. It's not bad or anything, but it does feel a little moddy. I love that word. Moddy. In order to join the mutant hunters, we need to kill a dozen or so ghouls from Rebirth and bring their talismans as proof. I have no idea what the Rebirth people even stand for, but they shoot us on sight, and the hunters shoot them on sight, so it's an easy political choice for us to make. See this gate? Beyond lies the Empire. The lady in the bookstore back in Sedit sells, among other things, educational holodiscs. This is how we know that there is a vault in Albuquerque. The Empire is an isolationist high-tech society of vault dwellers with a pretentious name. I'm guessing they are the source of all that Brotherhood of Steel tier technology the hunters seem to possess. But do you know who else has advanced technology? The Rebirth ghouls. Power armor-equipped generic NPCs are a rare thing in classic Fallout, and it changes the tactical situation quite a bit. It's impossible to bring that thing down quickly until you hit late game. Combat is much more difficult than in the official titles. Get used to having to disable dangerous enemies by shooting their limbs. A different weapon store in Albuquerque has an energy pistol and a suit of combat armor for sale. Can we afford all that? Of course we can. Gambling build. Before we are allowed to formally join the hunters, they want us to go through a medical examination. I wonder what happens if we have mutations. They'll probably just kill us. The game loves to slowly, incrementally push you towards doing evil shit. It does so masterfully. First, some ghouls in the desert threaten to find and kill you, so you join an anti-ghoul militia. And then they make you take the race purity test. You might as well. And then finally, you are marching into a tent with a bunch of heavily armed paramilitaries attempting to arrest a local tribal who has signs of mutation. How did we get here? Can't say this level of hostility is surprising considering the numbers of heavily armed hostile ghouls patrolling the area around Albuquerque, or what the super mutant migrations did to the fledgling civilization back in California. What's this little place? An old scrapyard. Reminds me of Estony from Jagged Alliance. Oh wow, that's an obscure reference, I'm sorry. A trader in Korath has this thing for sale. An Apollo laser pistol for astronaut use. Pretty sure it's a new item. Stats-wise, it's identical to a normal laser pistol, except it takes an extra action point to fire, because its grip is less ergonomical or whatever. Very clever item design, except this thing should have been available much earlier. That would have made the energy weapon starts more viable. Korath cops send us on a detective investigation. A serial killer is operating in town, murders people with a knife. The quest is fairly involved. You gather clues, talk to witnesses. This is kind of funny. One of the survivors describes the suspect as a white man, not too strong, in a baseball cap, a vest, and green t-shirt. She describes this sprite. We need to find a character that looks like this. Oh, I believe this is called a Sochi toilet. We find the suspect and confront him in the ring, as is the law in Korath. He isn't supposed to have a knife. Admittedly, whoever wrote the law probably didn't think that one of the combatants might wear a near impenetrable suit of armor. Back in Sedit, we can get involved with the Mexican Mafia. Once again, the game starts you off easy. Just observe the negotiations with one of the sheriff's men. And once again, one thing leads to another, and now we are in the middle of nowhere with a posse of Mexicans exchanging threats with the local raiders before we kill them. Hunting deathclaws for fun and XP. The Mafia boss of Korath tasks us with agitating the workers in the mines. You only need a spark in order to turn the ongoing strike into a fire. A spark can be either a speech check or a bribe. The mine becomes a graveyard for both the guards and the miners themselves, and the cops shot whoever was protesting outside. That's an incredibly dark resolution. I wonder what fate awaits the town now. The mine was the main source of wealth. I suppose they can hire more workers. It is undeniable that we are a bad person. Compared to the classic games and other total conversions, the world map is easily the weakest part of Resurrection. For one, it's the smallest world map I've ever seen in a Fallout game, which would be fine if not for a very poor encounter diversity. Even the laughingstock that was FOL had much better world map adventures. In the northwestern part, it's mostly wild animals. Northeast is red scorpions and raiders. The middle, around Albuquerque, is deathclaws and the Rebirth ghouls, which are even more dangerous. Wait, what is this place? Progema Complex is the game's equivalent of the Glow, I think. I've never actually been inside. You need explosives and a rope to get in. No reason for me to spoil all the game's mysteries. The further south we go, the more dangerous the encounters become. The super mutants, I assume, are the remnants of the Master's army. I love that mantises have a special death animations for being cut with a laser weapon. The Loner perk is borrowed from Fallout Tactics, and it's fantastic for players who are not planning on having companions. The biggest difference between the Czech game and the original is in the philosophy of the design of its combat challenges, which unfortunately was never the strongest part of the Fallout experience. In this game, quite a few combat encounters are made in the same style as in the Age of Decadence, meaning they were carefully tweaked to be as challenging as possible for the expected player level without being unfair. Let's take a look at the anatomy of some of those. Real-ass Sun Tzu hours. Here is us with our Mexican boys from the Lost Town taking on a raider gang. Our dudes have ranged weapons. The raiders have a screen of melee combatants. Behind them, 2 marksmen, as well as this guy. He is a priority target since he has a grenade launcher that deals extreme area of effect damage. You need to take him out without moving too far forward and getting focus fired. I imagine this battle is much harder for melee characters. Back in the gangster part of Sedit, there is this underground base belonging to the local raider organization. We can join them. The first, and unfortunately the only mission, has us attacking a trading caravan which is being simultaneously attacked by the Rebirth ghouls for a nice 3-way battle. As soon as the ghouls see us, they communicate via dialogue barks that we are now their primary target. The battle is centered around the rocket launcher man. Power armor, area of effect weapon with unlimited range. He can fuck you up. Thankfully, both the raiders and the caravan guards focus fire on the ghouls, and together we outnumber them almost 3-1. I still had to resort to cheap tactics like kiting in order to survive. The caravan is ours, and more importantly, so is this laser rifle. A generic caravan defense fight against a Rebirth attack. A simple encounter, but it's repeatable, and you might be forced to fight it with relatively low-tech weapons. The armored ghoul is equipped with a power fist. He hits hard, and it's unlikely you'll be able to take him down quickly. The other ghouls are armed with combat shotguns, which they use in full auto. Friendly fire is not a concern, since they do barely any damage to power armor. Shooting legs actually makes sense here. The pre-war armor is so good against small arms fire that both our caravaner friends ran out of bullets and had to resort to punching the crippled ghoul. Remember the hospital in Albuquerque where we did all them expensive operations? The doctors work with these guys, the organ harvesters, a donor collecting mission in the wasteland. Again, all of this started innocently enough, but here we are. The battle is similar to the slaver quests from Fallout 2. The victims are supposed to be taken alive. For this purpose, you are issued a special cattle prod. Some of the involuntary donors have firearms. The player needs to be proficient with melee weapons or have a good enough armor to physically tank the damage for an extended period of time. I love this one. We go on patrol with Dutch, the mutant hunter guarding the entrance. Against us, there are 3 units in power armor, 1 armed with Ripper knife, the rest with heavy lasers, as well as 3 unarmored goons with assault rifles. The latter are good targets to prioritize since they are very squishy. Thankfully, it's not just us and Dutch. One of the hunters provides fire support from behind the Albuquerque Junktown-style walls. If Dutch dies, which he almost never does, but here, one of the ghouls scores a lucky through armor critical, then the rest of the hunters will put the blame on us, and you basically have to reload a save. We are informed of a location of a camp of mutants not far from the city, and it's exactly what it says on the label. You can deal with the mutants peacefully, it's even possible to side with them against the hunters. It's not a combat encounter location, but we are gonna make it one. The trick to this engagement is that little booth over there. We hide behind it and take pot shots at the mutants. The minigun dudes will attack from medium range. The laser rifle ones will only shoot at point blank for some reason, even though it's a sniper's weapon. The rocket launcher muties are the most dangerous because their range is effectively unlimited, and unlike the minigun, the weapon doesn't lose potency with distance. The mutant in black is their leader, Dernus. On the body, there is this amazing new energy weapon, a plasma cannon. It's unique to this game. The gun is intended to be mounted on armored vehicles, so it has a very high strength rating of 8. This sprite is taken from Fallout Tactics. See how it doesn't conform to the classic Fallout color palette at all? Importing these sprites into the classic engine is almost always a bad idea. Most of the crates and shelves in the machine shop are empty. All the real treasure is on the underground level.
Hey, big guy. Looking for a good time?
The main narrative isn't exactly the heart of the experience here, but the game does have a major story twist, and it's coming. If you are worried about that sort of thing, then skip to a time code. Despite us lacking a point in strength, we can still use the plasma cannon, just with reduced accuracy. Before being overrun by super mutants, this place was the forward base of the Albuquerque hunters. They were interrogating the ghoul prisoners from the Rebirth. The cult has a base in a Voltec research complex, which contains a machine that can regenerate tissue, and thus is capable of transforming a ghoul into a pure human. The holodisc has the location of the complex as well as the instructions on how to get inside without a fight. You can probably guess where this is going. The ghoul prisoner is our old friend. Both of us are ghouls. Both of us are members of the Rebirth cult. This explains our stupid-ass build. Our character must have been a lab assistant who spent his free time playing cards with other dorks. We had some sort of a conflict with the cult leader who calls himself the Savior. Pretentious. We used the machine, got reborn or resurrected as a normal. The machine, as it turns out, requires human donors in order to function. This is why there are so many ghoul patrols in the desert. The Rebirth are kidnapping people. But it gets worse. Voltec never perfected the machine. It always inevitably kills the ghoul who uses it. It's like accelerated aging or something. Their bodies just eventually fall apart. We have less than a year to live. But why do ghouls even want to rehumanize? Sure, being discriminated against sucks shit, but other than that, being a ghoul is pretty sweet. Live for hundreds of years, be immune to radiation and poisons. I guess ultimately it all comes down to a single question. Do ghouls want to fuck? If they do, then having your genitals rot and fall off your body as you keep ghoulifying is not the optimal state of affairs. The meta-plot of Fallout Resurrection is revealed. But if ghouls don't care about sexual activity, then that just leaves discrimination, which is a problem that can be solved politically. Or, just start killing humans and don't stop until they like you. The game takes place right after Fallout 1, which is a period in the history of the setting when there were still many ghouls around, enough to form strong communities. We should report this back to the hunters, but probably not us being a crypto ghoul part. The hunters don't exactly have a sophisticated theory of why mutants are bad. The mutant might have been a human once, but once he changes, he loses all humanity. Jesus Christ, thanks for the speech, dude. The doc casually mentions that they're developing a new type of poison gas that would only work on mutants. That's very cool, doc. I love science. They have a gym here, and this thing, an excavation machine. Remember how I mentioned that there was a vault in Albuquerque? The hunters managed to dig their way into the lower levels of the Empire's vault, and then they somehow contaminated the rest of the installation with Wanamingos. The motherfuckers evicted the Empire from their own home. I assume the relations between the two entities were symbiotic, but now I'm not sure if this is the case. The hunters took advantage of the pre-war workshops and science facilities, explains all the advanced equipment they have, and for our successful and completely unprovoked assault on the mutant camp, we have been issued a suit of power armor. It's time we visit the Empire. Our adventure is about to come to an end, it looks like, and we still haven't been introduced to one of the key players. Well, it's a Vault City. The RoboBrain is a mobile public terminal that explains what this place is and where the traders and services are. There are two of them around, even though the entire Empire is just a single map, inaccessible for outsiders. So who are they for? In classic Fallout games, metal armor sprites are sometimes used to represent high-tech uniforms. The guy in blue is the Emperor. This society is a Vault Dweller monarchy, which is a fun idea, I guess. We can work for the Empire. There are quite a few side quests we can do. I've read in a guide that it's even possible to clean up Wanamingos and the hunters from the vault, but I don't want to. This is easily the worst looking map in the mod, and I don't want to spend time here. Wearing power armor increases your strength by 2 points. Means we can wield the tank plasma cannon without penalties. All of this will end in one of two ways. It's possible to rejoin the Rebirth cult and side with our kind against the humans, or we can destroy the cult. The ghouls need to be prevented from kidnapping more innocent people. This is about our legacy. Either way, we are a dead man. Our body will fall apart in less than a year. Sebastian, the leader of the hunters, placed a team of combat veterans under our command, just like in the end of Fallout 1, except in that game the Brotherhood was helping you to combat a genuine menace, while in Resurrection it's genocidal fascists against deluded radioactive cannibals. It's like Russians say, a frog fucked a snake. The actual facility is underground. The first floor. It's possible to infiltrate this place without engaging in combat, but we are committed. Don't like this choke point with the force field. It's gonna fuck us up. I almost regret my choice of solving the problem violently. The battle is not too hard or too easy, but it just takes a very long time for all the characters to go through their turns. The hunters Sebastian put under our command are incredibly helpful in both tanking and dealing damage. The cultists fucked me up pretty good. Had to go through tons of stimpaks. Let's see what a plasma cannon does to a RoboBrain. Fuck! Alright, let's try this again. On one of the bodies we find this thing. The Gatling laser was the ultimate weapon in the original Fallout, together with the upgraded plasma rifle. Both went out of favor in the subsequent games. The terminal near the entrance allows us to disable the force fields and the robots. Do it to not have to wait for too long between turns. The ghouls are mowing down the hunters. The Gatling is fantastic against unarmored targets, a lot less effective versus power armor. The ghoul mechanic talks to us, not realizing who is behind the helmet. The Vault Tech facility has 5 or 6 levels. Level 2 is the barracks, a fuckton of cultists and robots, and basically there is no reason for us to be here. Level 3 is engineering. By now, we lost our entire squad. Thankfully, the force field turned out to be a fantastic ally. Yeah, I don't know what's up with these guys. This Mr. Handy Robot is a vendor, I think. It refuses to deal with us. Level 4 is the human concentration camp. These are the involuntary organ donors required to power the machine. Now, Now that is what true dedication to the cause looks like. Level 5 is the machine itself. This human-looking guy in power armor is the savior. The sheer determination reflected in his eyes gives you the creeps. Oh, I get it. He's a human pretending to be a reborn ex-ghoul, a living proof that the machine is working. That's clever. He calls us a traitor and says that our friend, the ghoul who revealed that the machine never actually functioned properly, was mentally ill. The savior has end-boss-like qualities, shrugging off hits from the tank plasma cannon like it's nothing. Armed with a mega power fist, possibly the only one in the entire game, his attacks hurt a lot. After briefly disabling the man with a lucky critical, I opened his inventory and discovered this thing, a plasma gatling. Funny, I was at capacity, so I had to put some of our items into his inventory in order to steal the gun. Killing the end boss with his own weapon. The Savior's Journal. He was a mutant hunter. His squad wiped out. He was wounded in the head. Found this facility by accident. Gradually went insane. Decided his life goal is to exterminate all humans for some reason. He knew what the machine was and that it never worked. Didn't care, saw it as a tool for building power. Created a militarized cult with a purpose of putting pressure on human settlements. It was always a scam. We activate the self-destruct. Time to bail. The game populated the previously clean levels with ghoul reinforcements, but they are fodder for the plasma gatling. The reactor is in the green shit phase. That's bad. The licensed music plays as our character wanders off into the desert to die. The protagonist knows that the machine doesn't work. I wonder what the rationale for siding with the ghouls would be. Perhaps it opens an opportunity to strike against the Albuquerque Nazis. If you finished the game with the Rebirth ending, please explain in comments. The ending slides. Some of these have unique art, which is rare in this mod. The cult was destroyed. There were attempts to revive it, but they all failed. Julian, the leader of the gang we ended up siding with back in Rat Hole, made his people a feared raider band. They didn't really have any other skills. The mayor, whose daughter was killed, is still very sad. The village we started the game in ended up being slowly depopulated over time as its inhabitants were aging. The empire ended up being annexed by the hunters. The entirety of Albuquerque now belongs to them. The town's hospital business greatly benefited from all the violence. By wiping out the mutants, we cut short their journey east. Many other mutant packs suffered a similar fate. That was Fallout Resurrection. It feels less like a full Fallout game and more like a 2000-style massive expansion pack. Darkness over Daggerford for Neverwinter Nights, or Mysteries of Westgate for NWN2. But this is primarily because of the game's limited scope. Tiny world map, few locations, few encounters. The main story is downscaled. The Savior's motivations are not particularly deep. He feels more like a henchman for a real villain. On the other hand, the combat sequences in this game were some of the most memorable in the series. Despite the small number of towns, the game has a lot of side quests, on par with Fallout 1, maybe even more. This Guide to Fallout Resurrection by Lori is the only English language guide I found, and it lists most of the side adventures. Just look how many there are. We barely scratched the surface. If you want to learn more about the mod, watch Jackson's review of it, linked below. These are my asphalt settings that made the game run without slowdowns. I've only had one crash, and you've seen it. Check out the pinned comment underneath the video for relevant links. I hope everyone had a good time. See you guys in 2 weeks. Bam! A post-credit scene. I thought about taking my phone and recording a rant about Andorol, the Master and Margarita and accelerationism, but since we are in lockdown and I have an embarrassing lockdown haircut, consider yourself spared. Instead, let's do something more productive with our time. Like, go through the obsolete Mutants Rising demo since it's so very short.
War never changes.
The audio needs to be cleaned. Actually, it probably was. This demo is like 11 years old. There are a handful of new traits. Born wild, you always felt at home in the wastes surrounding Elko.
Elko, founded by the Chosen One. It united the survivors of Vault 13 and members of a primitive northern tribe.
I'm grateful that the devs created unique art, but it looks the wrong kind of cartoony, clashes with the established Fallout aesthetic a little.
And you have lived with your adoptive father, Cassidy, as far back as you can remember.
We essentially take on the role of Rose of Sharon Cassidy, but note that this game was written long before New Vegas was even a concept. Oh my god, we have a bench right here in our room. This is exactly what I'm planning to do once I'm YouTube rich.
I'm sure you remember all the stories about the Chosen One, the guy who helped fund this town a boatload of years ago.
The talking head is okay. Sonora kind of spoiled me. This is not quite as good, but on the plus side, Cassidy is fully voice acted.
Well, I'm starting to worry about the crazy bastard. I haven't heard jack shit from him for a very long time. Something's wrong.
The actor does an okay job. Although there is this very common problem with voice acting in indie games, the actor talks very slow. We have to find the protagonist of Fallout 2 who mysteriously disappeared. But first, let's take a look around. The town of Elko. Is Elko a real place? Yes, it is. I love this track. Very distinctly Fallout. The mapping style feels a little more authentic than in Resurrection. A local asks to help him against a pack of wild dogs, a small side quest that doubles as a combat tutorial. The writing is a little wordy, so more like Fallout 2 than 1. Semicolons are frequently used. That's a bad sign. The authorities managed to install 2 high-tech defense turrets behind the wall. This is a cool design idea. I wish these weren't Fallout Tactics sprites. Since the game takes place years after Fallout 2, we are transitioning from post-apocalypse to post-post-apocalypse, and the signs of this are everywhere. Sophisticated civilian technology, high-tech-ish medical care, honest-to-God small businesses. The tribal communities are still a thing. The central feature of the demo is a really boring detective-slash-fetch quest that showcases the conflict between the 2 social cliques of Elko, the tribals and the civilizeds. It's not super engaging, but everything else about the demo is good. The quest ends with Elko authorities arresting the shaman, who was playing some sort of a political game, poisoning the locals. The guard calls him a loony fuck. Chosen One's old Pip-Boy and the Volt suit are right here in Elko in this crypt. That's a crap ton of hallucinogenic mushrooms.
The shaman had a whole buttload of shrooms. Crazy junky bastard.
My thoughts exactly. Battling small critters in poorly lit corridors. For Fallout nerds, this is what home feels like. The chest with the items we need. It doesn't automatically change your sprite. You need to actually manually wear the jumpsuit.
God damn. You look just like him with that suit on.
Oh, I get it.
The mutant attack was fierce and relentless.
The mutants invaded and destroyed the town. A number of survivors fled, including ourselves and Cassidy. Unfortunately, our foster father had a heart attack due to all the stress. Wow, the Chosen didn't share the heart meds with him.
You realize that the future of Elko lies in your hands.
That was Mutants Rising, an old breed of RPG. The demo had just enough content to make me upset that we don't have a full game. A 100% free Fallout 2 total conversion. Track our progress at mutantsrising.info. An old breed of website. Last update was in 2016, and the one before that in 2013. Not looking good. But I'm hoping for the best. Make sure you check the links in the pinned comment.